You are listening to the Enormocast.
Hey, crack climbers. Do you want a crack shoe that can easily do it all? From toddler-sized thin tips to soul-crushing offwidths and every single size in between? Well, too bad. Because frankly, that shoe doesn't exist. So this is where the word quiver comes in. Serious rock climbers simply don't rely on a single pair of shoes for everything, amigos. And Sportiva is more than happy to supply the goods. Start with the TC Pro, and you've got the monster-wide, all-the-way thin hands covered. Then a pair of Eco Mythos will pick up the slack in those smaller, hard-to-stuff sizes. Incidentally, both face climb like butter too. Well, not all slippery and greasy like actual butter, but, you know, delicious and satisfying. Then for the really, really thin stuff, well, you're kind of on your own because those campfire Indian Creek debates can rage late into the night. Loose sport climbing or bouldering shoe? That's not a bad bet. Or just stuff those TC Pros and get strong? That works for some. Paddle outside the crack? Seen a lot of really good climbers go that route. Personally, I run a sized up Mira or a Katana and grimace and go. But whatever size is your crack dream or nightmare, Sportiva has the right weapons to drop into your quiver. And they're built to outlast even the most pitiful flailing. Check it all out at Sportiva.com or the local shop that really, really could use your business right now.
We gotta get
Listen, where you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Normo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
big
house. We
place
sold
that
it
side
out.
of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000 seats?
We
really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enorma at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is March 19th, about 10 o'clock p.m., 2020, or as I'm calling it, PCV 1, Post-Coronavirus 1, the new epoch. And this is episode 194 of the Enormocast, a conversation with coach, sport climber, Red River Gorge denizen, Dru Mack. And mostly I've stopped apologizing for late podcasts because I'm on my own schedule. I'm not beholden to anything. I just try to get 2 out a month. But, you know, this one has run into about the 3.5 week range since the last one. And, you know, there's been stuff going on. I think there's been stuff going on. One of those things that has been going on is that right about the time I was going to put the finishing touches on this thing, I was not nearly as depressed and anxious as I am now. The Enormal Child's school closed, and he showed up in my life full-time again. It's my responsibility, which is fine, you know, and I admire all you folks who are instantly gotten into homeschooling. Yeah, not really doing that over here. Lots of cartoons, lots of bike rides, not a lot of finger painting, but, you know, doing our best over here. So that kind of interrupted a few things to begin with. And frankly, it's just been hard to turn the mics on. I've tried to record this a few times, and I just, you know, haven't been feeling it. So here I am, with a little whiskey on board, and we'll try to get it done today. The last 3 weeks have been quite an upheaval. For me, it started with being sort of drawn in a little bit to a rescue down on El Gigante in Chihuahua, Mexico, where a young climber from Moab, Utah, or at least based out of Moab these days, Nolan Smith, was killed when rockfall cut his rope and he fell to his death, leaving his partner Aaron Livingston on the wall in need of a rescue in a very remote place. And because of a little bit of knowledge that I have, having climbed the wall, El Gigante, I was sort of pumped for some information. I did very little. I felt quite helpless because it was so remote, as did a lot of the rescuers. But the folks involved did an amazing job to get Aaron off the wall very quickly, and then to deal with difficult, complicated, both geographically and politically, body recovery at the base of the wall. So my heart goes out to all those folks involved, to Nolan's family, to his friends, and just really turned out that his ticket was up, wrong place, wrong time, and those guys were well in their abilities on that wall, and I think that exact thing could have happened, the rock fall, without cutting the rope, 99 out of 100 times, and hopefully Aaron is with friends and family and taking care of his mental health. But of course, those folks returned to what probably will turn out to be a nationwide mental health crisis as well as a physical health crisis with the coronavirus. I don't need to bang on that too much. You guys are probably sucking in so much information on that it's hard to swallow. But I will say this as a PSA, the time to go on your climbing trip, your spring break plans, all that stuff is over. If you have a home, stay home. If you don't have a home, if you're a van lifer, try to limit your interaction with stores and cafes and restaurants and all those things that you normally frequent to use the internet and whatnot. Try to stay in one place. Try to gather some folks around you that will keep you company, your little pod, your little viral pod, and then don't go out into the world and spread it around. Every one of us could be sort of a walking viral time bomb, and we need to pay attention and just curb those appetites for the time being. It'll only be a couple months, hopefully. Rest, recuperate, rest those joints. And if you are in a place that you can climb, well, try to limit your exposure to other people. And again, limit your interaction with the resources that you normally use when you're out on the road. And good luck with that. Be careful, be safe, be conscientious. Okay, some little bit brighter business to talk about. My friends Taz and Brad over at Boulder Denim are running a Kickstarter right now. And I'm a little late to the party. The Kickstarter is very well funded, but I still wanted to mention it because there's some deals to be had over there. And I know, of course, right now people are like, oh my God, what is happening with the economy? Money is probably tight, so maybe not the best time to be running a Kickstarter. But like I said, it looks like it was funded before this all went down. But nevertheless, you guys need jeans. And they make some awesome climbing jeans. The reason I wanted to promote this, and this is not a paid promotion, is because I admire what those guys did. They met as young men, teenagers actually, busboys, and eventually started this business together. Very small, very grassroots type setup. They're doing a redesign, which is why they're running a Kickstarter. Companies like that, they don't necessarily have a lot of money to do redesigns. And this is just simply a way to do pre-orders, actually. It's not a Kickstarter where you're dumping money into some concept that might just disappear. But yeah, you're just pre-ordering and getting a really solid deal on some jeans. You need jeans, even in this time of pestilence. Check it out. It's over at Kickstarter. The actual address is too complicated. Just go to Kickstarter and search for Boulder Denim 3.0 and check out what they have. Even if you're not planning to pledge, they've got a really cool story. Again, young climbing entrepreneurs, trying to fill a niche, I think. Is it niche? Is it epoch? Epic? I have no idea. All right. Keep in mind, too, that if this does turn into some sort of zombie type apocalypse, you're going to need a high kick. High kick to the head just could be the thing to take one of those monsters down. Moving on. This is one of those intros that's going to go on, but you know what? It's probably okay to talk right now. Don't you think? Let's talk a little bit about Dru Mack. Drew showed up on the mic just minutes, it felt like, after he sent one of his more important projects in his life. And this interview talks a lot about that. It was kind of a cool nexus of influences and ideas that came together when he sent. And talk a little bit about coaching and about anxiety and just about going forward with this weird, funny life that we call climbing. And he's also dabbling in becoming a professional climber. Quite the polar opposite of the George Lowe interview that's been around for 3.5 weeks now. That's fitting. George Lowe deserves to be on the top of the feed for a little bit longer than most people. But yeah, this is a little bit of the opposite end of the spectrum. George, historic figure, deep climbing roots in the mountains, and Dru, a sport climber, a little bit new to the scene. And this one's all about that kind of motivation. So good bookend to both ideas in climbing. And I hope you dig it. And I hope all these podcasts, whether this one, whether my old episodes, and maybe even the Run Out, the newer podcast with Andrew Bicheret, I hope they just take your mind off shit, because your mind needs to be taken off the shit right now. So dig it. An hour of me and Dru Mack talking about this frivolous little thing we call climbing. So Tradsters, tell me who loves you more than Black Diamond. Wait, your mom? Give me a break. She may be good for a warm meal and an emergency check when the Sprinter turbo shits the bed. But when did your mom ever reduce your rack weight by 30% with a still futuristic cam like the Ultralight Camelot? In the last 5 years, Black Diamond has refined and redesigned their cams over and over to give you the best protection money can buy. And now, guess what? They took the venerable C3 and X4 and replaced them with the Z4. Wait, what? Just listen. The likes of Hazel Finley and Carla Traversi helped with these from the ground up. Get it? And then Hazel sent Magic Line just to prove their worth. So are they only good for 514? Of course not. They're good whenever you need a low-profile, hard-sticking cam that won't wobble around in your hand like a slippery hot dog when you pull the trigger. So go to blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop to check out the Z4, the latest in a continuing tradition of cam refinement from the climber engineers at Black Diamond. Tell them your mom sent you.
Like living in St. George for the last 2 months or so, like in my car, and every once in a while I get a hotel room just to live better.
Yeah,
and
get cleaned up, relax,
dude,
catch up on your shitty television.
Crazy how some are freezing cold and some are so hot.
Totally. Yeah, the hotel on the road thing is so luxurious sometimes.
Oh,
like
man.
Even like a totally shitty hotel.
Just like balling out.
Yeah, totally.
Like living in your Honda Pilot.
Yeah. And I always binge. I'm really into those the car building shows.
Oh, interesting.
Like the garage, like hot rod.
Yeah.
Or like custom garage shows.
Okay. Yeah.
And we don't really have that access to that kind of thing at my house, so that's kind of my go-to
You're
like TV binge if I can find one of those.
The TV. Yeah.
I couldn't find. I was at I got here like 12:30 last night and I couldn't find one. I was super bummed. So it's like
that's classic.
They're so funny too because if you binge watch them, they're all the same and they all have like this. It's like these manufactured crises.
Yep.
Yep.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I sort of like mechanicking on my car, so it's fun to watch them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's Honnold getting escorted to some event later today. That's an old joke from Corey Rich's podcast last year in this very same spot. So,
for real.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So let's roll, huh?
Yeah.
You got any more questions?
No,
Okay,
excited.
we'll keep some of
excited
that.
to be here.
Stoked that we worked this out.
Yeah.
We almost tried to do it in Carbondale, but we kind of missed each other just by a few minutes in a way with timing. But we had been talking about getting together all month, and you were like, I'll be driving through at some point. And then all of a sudden, you were like, sent my project.
Did the rig.
And it was kind of like an interesting text and story, I guess.
Yeah.
So tell me about what you were doing in St. George leading up to this project. You didn't even tell me what it was, so you can tell us now. But
it's cool. This is a really cool moment for me because I get to talk about this thing that was really important to me. And social media nowadays, it feels hard to like write about your experiences. It's so short form. So I feel like honored to be here and also have this moment that just happened. But yeah, at the beginning of November, I came out to the St. George area to sport climb in the desert. And, I had good friends out there who'd always told me to come climb. And so I just kind of dipped out from Kentucky and, I've been there since November. I did a bit of time in Vegas, went bouldering, did some big walls. But I basically just started trying this route called Flight of the Conchords in the Hurricane. And that's a 14C, it's like a boulder low, and then kind of easy climbing in the middle, and then a hard boulder at the top. And quickly I was like falling at the end. And I took some breaks, like I said. I went to Vegas and bouldered, and I just did my, just did the normal thing. And then over the last like month, I'd say, I've just been locked in there at the Hurricane. Like, for me, performance mode is a 1 on, 1 off. So I'm like, climb a day, rest a day, climb a day, which just becomes like, it's a lot of work and energy and effort and time to think. That much resting. It's also just a lot of time to like drive yourself crazy a little bit. So this whole process was just, this whole route really meant a lot to me. I haven't climbed 14C outside of Kentucky. So that's, that was really, I wanted to do that. That's proud for me. It was something proving to myself and important to myself, and just keep pushing. And I haven't done a hard route. I think, I haven't done 514C since the spring, last spring. So, I had dealt with some injuries this summer, and it just like this project meant a lot to me. Is what I'm trying to explain.
Right.
It meant a lot to me just in the grand scope of like coming out and being in a new area, trying a really hard route for myself and just falling at the end over and over and over again. And I probably fell up at the top like between 20 and 30 times of like a 90-foot route, you know, falling 3 moves from the jug, 3 moves from the anchors, basically.
Well,
and
you
just
gotta
doing that repeatedly.
Console yourself. It's good for your fitness.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's what all the homies were like.
Exactly.
Like,
you're just getting stronger,
You're
bro.
going to be really fit right now. But there's a whole mental, the mental battle of hard projects. And I've dealt with those before, and I've dealt with this process before, and the mental, the physical side of all of that. And then, like time was ticking, I was like, I'm coming here for the OR show to meet with some companies. And I was like, man, do I bail from the project and, call it a wrap and keep heading home to Kentucky? Or do I like drive to Denver and then drive back? And what makes sense, And,
so like you're already contingency.
I'm already
that you're not going to do it.
I'm like stressed. You have these backup plans and these stress plans of like, it's just like you're thinking ahead already, and I knew I could do the route any try for the last month,
right?
Which is so taxing and tiring, and I think it's really important to be confident, but that confidence can lead to expectation as well, And you're like, if every try is the try that it could happen, every try that you don't do it can only lead to more frustration.
Right. Yeah, so, it's a tricky game.
Yeah. And I felt good about the whole process. I felt really mentally okay. I felt like I was happy to be there. I was really happy to be there. I felt like I put in the work. I prepared. I practiced. I did all those things, and I could live with whatever result that was. And that's really important to me because I've had projects where I'm just really mad or frustrated or whatever. I felt like in a good headspace. I tried once that morning, and I felt, we'll get into like that day, I guess. I felt once that morning, and I was really frustrated. I knew I had to leave, and I knew I didn't really have much time. And I was just kind of unsure of like, being out on the road that long, is ready to get home, ready to train, ready to prepare for the things that come next. So I was bummed, I was like, I was not psyched. Normally my first try is my best. So I was just like kind of in my feels.
Right.
I turned my phone on, kind of check the time. I normally check the time after my project to see how long I should rest. And my phone was blown up. I had like 10 text messages, and it was all that Kobe Bryant had passed away. Uh-huh. And I grew up playing basketball since I was a little kid. I'm a huge fan. It's like climbing used to be my biggest inspiration for a long time, and I'm still really inspired by climbing. But you also, I've found over the last 5 or 6 years that like other things inspire me more than climbing, probably because I climb every day, a lot of days.
Right.
I kind of refound my love for basketball. I play it like, I always have shoes in my car. I always have a ball in my car. It's like, I love the game. And of course, Kobe's just this larger than life figure, for hard work, for perseverance, for, this, just everything, just like an idol, a hero. So to hear that news, like on this day that I was already feeling these personal things, was just, it felt weird. It felt sad. I felt like just pure tragedy. Like, beyond myself of like, whatever. I don't care about rock climbing. At that moment, I didn't care about the route anymore. I didn't care of like, there's people dying, like literally people dying. And like 13-year-old, his daughter was on the helicopter. Like, it just didn't climbing didn't matter to me at all. And it's weird. It was really weird to talk about like death of somebody that you that you connect with, but you don't personally know as well, and how that affects you, and how those feelings just, rap music's really important to me. And over the last couple of years, a couple of rappers passed away that I really where it was inspired by and like felt emotions through their music. So this it just felt really heavy. And one of my friends encouraged me. I was like, I don't want to try. I don't really care. I just want to kind of move on. And he was just like, Mamba mentality. That was like, Kobe's book, his hashtag, kind of just this mantra of, like all that hard work, all those hours you put in, all that just effort. And he told me like, you should try again. He was like, you should just go for it. Kobe would want you to try again in a weird way, And I did the route. And I haven't told many people this, but I always have mantras in my head of like, rap song or lyrics or just like things like keep calm, things that I am saying to myself the entire time I'm climbing. And that can either help me stay chill or can amp me up in those moments where I need to have like a lot of energy. And so for that red point, I just said Mamba mentality the entire time, and probably 50 times as I climbed the route. And, I did it. It's just like this surreal feeling. And I clipped the anchors. And I haven't told anyone other than my friends this, but I just started crying, like sobbing. Uh-huh. And I don't like it. It wasn't that I felt like this rush of emotion from Kobe or from the route or from my last year of not really feeling inspired or climbing how I feel like I'm capable of. It felt like all of that. It just felt like this moment of like pure, like I don't even know the right words, cathartic in this weird way of just like this rush. And I just cried for like 10 minutes.
Right on.
And people came to me and gave me big hugs, and everyone in Crag was really happy, and I felt happy, but I also felt like this weight in my stomach. I just felt like I felt a general sadness and a happiness and like a relief.
Right.
And I also just didn't know how to feel.
Right.
It was like this it's just a weird moment. Maybe not my hardest rock climb ever. It won't be like I'm capable of much more. I really believe that. But I think it'll be forever like one of the most important and memorable climbing experiences I've ever had. Without a doubt. Just because of the massive, dramatic, like just very dramatic feelings all happening at the same time and not being able to really understand how that felt. I'm a really emotional person as well, so I felt all of those things like in my stomach, and it felt crazy. It felt weird and crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had the right friends around.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Good people around, and also just like
because if I was there, I would have like turned away, in embarrassment and let you just do your thing.
Totally.
Because that's the kind of I'm like the old school guy, like
totally.
Oh my god, he's crying now.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And other people would have.
What
done
do I
that.
do?
And there are people at the Crag that didn't know about like this
like,
Kobe situation or my last year of like, and that's a whole nother. We could talk for a long time about.
That's what we're here for.
Last year was just a hard year for me,
right.
And I've written about that and I've talked about that. That's like my own baggage and stuff that I handle. But this route was a redemption of sorts for me, and it felt like I worked really hard for it, and I was really proud of it. And so yeah, I mean, it's cool to have people there's people definitely there that were like.
Those guys losing it.
Yeah, he's totally, and I'm fine with that.
No, I mean it's just
I don't care to be dramatic.
You don't always feel like
explain.
You've created or you have a relationship to sort of move over there, and some random guy comes up and gives you a hug or whatever. It's fine. It's important for me to like call some of my friends that were there for me the whole process. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. That's only happened. That only happened like a couple days ago, right?
Yeah, a couple. Days
I mean,
ago.
how are you feeling now? Is it still like with you? Are you still like?
Yeah. I mean, it's like this thing of.
I mean, obviously, you've gotten more information about, what happened with the helicopter and all that sort of stuff. But just aside from that, like the feelings that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still
riding it.
I don't think I'll ever truly understand the emotions of that moment. But I've thought a lot about it, and just I think that there's triumph and tragedy. I think that there's a lot there of like maybe why I climbed, like this disconnect of having this a good friend of mine, Felipe, did a hard route in Spain like a year ago, and it was right after David Lama passed away. And he said, it's not the scenario that you want, obviously, at all, but there's you realize in those moments how little this climbing thing is, or I can't even think of the right word, but how whatever this route means, how I spent so much time and effort working on it, and how it became this big, massive thing in my head. But, there's real life happening, and there are millions of people around the world that are feeling this loss right now, not just me.
Right.
And people who are inspired in different ways, who are inspired by his legacy. And in that moment, I can only be like, I was inspired by everything that he did and created, and just to live life to the fullest, anything can happen. I don't know how to feel about it still.
Right.
I don't know how to talk about it or write about it even, because
Right.
it's weird I started writing about this whole thing and that day, and I was like, this day isn't about me, this day, I don't want this day to be remembered by like this route that I did. I want it to be remembered by like the legacy and these people who unfortunately aren't with us anymore. It just felt like I was writing about myself.
Right.
And I didn't like that.
Well, that's a word, and it's sort of cliche, but it's cliche for a reason.
Yep.
And that's a process. I mean,
Yep.
you have to process it still.
Yep.
It was 2 days ago, 3
Yeah.
days ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
to begin to wrap your brain around it and
Yeah.
intellectualize it a little bit, but
Yeah.
keep those emotions there. It's like,
Yeah. And all of those moments, trying to process all of that.
Well, and isn't that like I don't know how you feel about your writing as far as a skill or whatever. But really that's what makes good writing or good, however you're going to communicate it, is the fact is if you're a person who can find that way of, that's really it. Like that's what makes people
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
and I do, like, I put up a Instagram post after, being, I wrote bittersweet. It was the first word that I wrote, and that's how it felt, like, a lot. And in that moment, I wanted to write about, how happy I was to climb the route, but I wanted to just tell people I'm proud of this. Then this thing also happened.
Right.
And if you know me, I just keep it all short.
Right.
If you know me, you know how both of these things have such a massive impact on my life. And I'll let the audience come to their conclusions with that,
Yeah. And then, it sounds to me like part of this was this letting go thing that I hear so much about with, and it's worked for me. I mean, as simple as like, the send that you do on what you thought was just going to be sort of a working burn because you're wasted and you send it. And it seems like that baggage sort of like, oh, this doesn't matter.
Yep.
In the not mattering, it was like, oh, I can climb this in a lighter way or like
I mean, totally. And I think that like through this whole process, I was like trying to convince myself that I was let go or that I was like distant from how much I wanted to do it. But at the same time, all I wanted to do was climb the route.
Yeah, no,
so it's like totally not like I felt like I was convincing myself of how I wanted to feel.
Right.
It was like, oh, that just has to happen. You just have to get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Like, and to me, when I climbed the route, I was just climbing to climb. I wasn't trying to send the route. I was just trying to rock climb.
Right.
And there's such a massive difference in those two sediments.
Yeah.
Like, if every try is trying to send, you're missing a piece of like
it's funny,
the authenticity of just rock climbing.
Well, it's funny because it's like it's a paradox. I mean, it's a classic paradox.
Yep.
Like trying so hard is suddenly becoming this impediment to succeeding. I mean, it's the essence as far as I understand it, and someone can correct me, but it's sort of the essence of like a Taoist theory of like being not trying to succeed or whatever. Yeah. So, and have you, looking back at like some of the, I mean, what I found in terms of media on you, a lot of it is around training, but a lot of it is around physical training. Have you delved into this a lot with your own, either talking to other people or with yourself as far as maybe
the mental.
This weird, and it's almost like,
it's funny.
I mean, there's real sports psychology around it, but then it becomes very specific to climbing. I think that runs a little bit differently, since there's not like technically a competitor.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. And so that's, a lot of the inspirations that I have are competitor sports. And I grew up playing basketball. So you shit talk, and like you can be confident in like that kind of stuff. But climbing's so drastically different from that.
Right.
You have to be motivated and excited and like focused, but also like very calm and very outside of also that excitement.
Right.
No, like I've always been asked that, like in clinics or whatever, like people will ask me how I deal with the mental side, and I've always felt like I was really good at it. But then there's certain scenarios where you're like, oh, I'm awful at this. And I think that's probably how it goes.
A few cloudy days in a hurricane, and you're like, well, maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something I try to talk to my friends about and just like learn about, and then just trying to really pay attention to yourself and how I feel and what I'm thinking about and how I'm processing these different emotions and feelings and the mental sides of things. Music is really helpful for me to either calm me down or get me really motivated. But yeah, I think that's something that like, especially after this process.
It might have provided a piece of the puzzle a little bit.
Definitely. Well, and I think it'll just be something that I'll never know.
Right.
And I'll just always take notes of, like I've taken a lot of just mental notes from this whole process, like stepping away to Vegas to do some bouldering was really healthy. Right. And maybe at that point, stepping away to come to Denver, had I not climbed the route, would have been really healthy. And so like, those are the mental things I like taking note of on the day to day. Like it's hard,
right?
It's hard when you like really care about something and want to perform and want to do it. And I'm still working through that.
Well, the stepping away thing is I mean, if you have the time, right? Sometimes life makes 100%. You step away.
I'm a very privileged to have this lifestyle.
I think the stepping away thing is always a trick too, because there's like giving up and it's a fine line between giving up or I may never get back to this thing, but recognizing it's maybe time. I mean, again, going back to just observations in the sport over the years is that there's that classic thing where you high point and then you start falling lower and lower and lower, and so I have a good friend, Michael Logan. He's been on the show actually on a listener mail or something, but he was climbing in Rifle on Living in Fear.
Great route.
Okay, Living in Fear.
That's a mental battle. Like I had a mental battle on.
And this was like, a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades ago. But I mean, it was literally affecting his marriage.
Wow. Yeah.
And in terms of just time put in and his frustration. And, he was falling lower and lower and lower and lower. And he had to just walk away and he never went back.
Yep.
Life intervened.
Yep.
He has 2 kids now and stuff, but he just had to give up or it was like ruining him.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think there's a time where it's like, like stepping away for good is okay, or stepping away until you feel this peace of mind, Right. And for me, it's like I can go to Vegas and have a mini boulder project and know that little boulder, like I only will step away if to do something that I know is going to help push me forward.
Right.
Like I'm very like, if I fall, I'm going to take inventory of why I fell, what happened, why did that happen, what can I do better to not have that happen more. So like, Vegas was important, or hangboarding more, or maybe like burning out on another route at the end of the day is like, it can push you forward a little bit. It's not like, to me, it's easy to get in a project mindset of like just beating your head against the wall. I have to really take note of what's going to make this change.
I haven't had someone like you on the show in a while in terms of a real performance-oriented rock climber.
Yeah.
I mean, I get all types, right?
Totally.
And I think that sometimes I like these, I mean, it's pretty in the weeds kind of shows.
Yeah.
But what it shows, I think, the audience, and something I've known for a while, is that, these sport climbs, right? Like if you're not a sport climber, if you're sort of a all-arounder or a mountain climber, you can look at this as like sort of the hard candy of climbing, like, fun and good, but like not that big a deal. But realizing that the level of performance to climb, I mean, 14C, I think in the media you can even not even think of that as like that big a deal anymore.
Yeah, totally.
But it's
totally.
You know, I just like to hear about it because I realize that if I climb, let's see, middle 513, it's like, it's easy to get this feeling that, well, you know, a little more work, a couple more pull-ups, some finger.
Yeah.
I could push myself, but there's just so much more to it. And I like the fact that for you personally, you know, this route, this 90-foot bolted climb, I mean, it has all the portents of a big mountain of what other people approach, you know, what they would consider very serious climbing.
Totally.
But, yeah.
I mean, I think that sport climbing or bouldering is very accessible, and I'm not like it's low consequence. I'm not out in the woods. I'm not out like, you know, in the Red River Range or like
but we're not
like
talking
crazy.
about that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's
exactly. But I think that there are like you have to. There's so many like subtleties to really climbing at your limit, and whether that's 515 or you're trying to do your first 12A and you spend a month invested on it, like there's so much baggage with that when you want to accomplish something.
Well, and I also like make a case, and I want to make a case that embrace the baggage, because you know, it's easy, like you just said, okay, your first 12A, and it's easy to have whatever high you get from that, like instantly deflated by thinking about how much harder other people climb, or 100%. You know, there's all those, whatever it is, like, oh, well, you know, people were warming up on my project. Like that.
No, man.
But I'm like, look, embrace it, because it can be meaningful if you let it be meaningful. And like, I'm always just like, go down the path, like get into it.
And that's why I wouldn't quit.
Right.
You know, that's why I would have driven here to Denver and gone back, is because like I put in all of that work and effort, and that journey is really important to me. But that moment, that destination, that like feeling is hard to beat.
Right.
It's so hard. Like that's, you know, I do like that moment is insane. Mm-hmm. I could have one of those moments every 5 years, and that's like pretty special. You know, like where you really invest in something and you have that 6 minutes on the wall. That's like truly,
I know, it's
amazing.
It's just wild. And you're like this type of climber, which is also really fun to talk to, because you allow yourself this like emotional connection to what you're doing, because there's a whole nother school of like the no big deal people. And I think I have a tendency to be in that, you know. I was joking, not joking that like I would have just been like, oh, dude's crying. Although actually that's not true, because I hugged Ethan Pringle when he cried after Route in Spain. So I can get past it, but I have a tendency,
I get it.
I have a tendency to be the no big deal person. And so like, you know, I like every hard climb I've ever done, I've already downgraded it in my head before, like literally before my feet have touched the ground, because I don't climb that hard.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't. I mean, it wasn't that hard, so it must not be like whatever it was, you know. And we're talking in the 513 grades.
I think that's why, you know, like people connect with me via my social media, or whether it's at the crag or want to say hi to me or whatever. Like, you know, I'm just trying really hard.
Right.
And I really care about what I'm doing, and I care about the people around me, and I want to succeed, and I want, you know, and I also find like I'll get emotional like if somebody else is really happy about doing something.
Right.
You know, if somebody does their first whatever, it's cool to me if you put in the work for it.
Right.
So like, yeah, I get it. I understand the no big deal side of things, and sometimes I've done that with some routes, and then there's other ones that just for some reason mean a whole lot more.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, at least in my case, it's probably, you know, I've sort of dabbled in what I would consider performance climbing for me. It's probably partially why I'm not as successful, and it's just all personality, you know. And I've felt that way before, where, you know, I just can't rise to the challenge because I sort of have this attitude problem, to put it succinctly.
Interesting.
Like an attitude problem, like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so I've wrestled with that in a way, like, how do I hook my jumper cables into this, what I see guys like you doing, and I can't necessarily just create that like organically, or I don't know, you know. I've just kind of been working on it for years.
There's a side of me that's like that with some climbing media nowadays. Because like, if I see a video of somebody and I'm really proud of what they did, but they're in the video talking about, and there's no shots fired at all, but like they're talking about the process and what it took, and I had to change my life and my eating, and I had to be better, and I had to. At a certain point, it's like how many times are you changing your life? How many times are you like, making these major life changes to do this rock climb or to be a better rock climber? I get tired of that. It's like I'd rather just like put in the work behind the scenes and then like show up and do something that like took me a lot of work. And but like and even saying that, like I really did, like I changed how I ate. I didn't like I cut everything. I like was stretching for 3 hours a day. Like when you're fully invested into something, it's hard not to be emotional. It's hard not to really care about it, because you're literally like it's obsession. It's purely obsession,
right?
Which can be unhealthy as well, But like I just lived for a month to climb that route, which is like insane,
right?
And then a lot of people could listen to this and say, like, that's silly.
Yeah.
And I can fully understand that.
Right.
And I could look at myself and be like, you're insane, dog. Like, that's nutty. What were you doing?
Well,
but also, I'm like, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, it's cool. I mean, the one thing I want to say, too, is like, it can seem silly or whatever, but to me, it's not boring. And I think that, I mean, and honestly, like, I think that a lot of folks can throw away this whole, like, sport climbing thing, again, as being like, well, those guys are just, like, they just train so heavily. And it's like, when you get to nitty gritty, it's so much more than that. And if it's communicated a certain way, talking about what you look at on social media can be empty, or it can, people can get something in there, but to me, it's not boring.
Yep.
And I also battle with that, because I sometimes, I do get sort of tired of like, I dug deep and I sent, kind of a thing.
Totally.
But that is boring, but the getting into like the nitty gritty sometimes can't be. So
yeah, totally.
Speaking of that, I mean, if you want to talk about, I don't know, and we move back into this year of baggage.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about? Injuries? Are we talking about?
So, yeah, I mean, I've written a little bit about it, but, like a part of why I was really happy to do this, and that text came across probably excited, is like, Instagram to me isn't the avenue to express how I feel and the things that I want to explain and share, and hopefully that inspires somebody.
Aren't we like, a lot, it feels like a lot of people are confronting this very issue lately, to me. I mean, are we at some place where there's going to be a little bit of a pullback from? To me,
there's been such a, I don't know, and maybe I need to be careful of what I say, which is what we're talking about in a way too, is that there's a bubble of vulnerability in a weird way. There's so much vulnerability on Instagram, and authenticity. You're supposed to be authentic, right? But then, how much is oversharing? How much like do I really? How much like are you trying to be authentic so that people will like attach to that or feel something with that? And is that then authentic?
Right.
And that's something that, like, as somebody who has written a lot on Instagram and posted a lot and shared a lot of how I feel and things like that, it's something that I just felt like, I'm just trying to be aware of, like, when is the time to be authentic and share these important things, and when is the time to say less. Right. Say less and do more, and maybe you can get the whole picture across by saying less. And where I'm at nowadays. And I have nothing wrong with people being vulnerable and doing all of those things. But personally, I just felt like there's some things that belong to me and belong to, my friends and family that I want to share. Mm-hmm. And there's other things that'll stay off of the internet.
Right. Yet here
and
we
maybe,
are.
and
this is going on the internet.
I have a but like it's different. It's different though,
I get it. Yeah,
it's different. Like, and I have a website and it has a blog on it, and I think that's closer to an avenue of expressing that day-to-day emotion or that day of what it took to climb this route. Mm-hmm. And a podcast is even more in depth of like, if this feels personal. Right. And it feels genuine. And I feel like I can talk to you as a human, and I can explain how I felt and the things that I've dealt with, and not to say that like I've been through a lot, because there's a million people going through more, but everyone is going through their own battles and their own trials and tribulations. And if my stories can help one person, then I'm happy. So that's the long-winded of like why I was excited about this and why, you know, I haven't written a lot about my last year. But like I had some relationship issues with friends that were really difficult. And that doesn't need to be, you know, like there's just things in life that are really hard. Right. And there's people that you really care about, and they can break your heart. Right. You know, and that was something that happened, and I had some family members pass away. I injured my finger, and then I had I coach a 15-year-old kid that I worked with for 4 years, and he tried to commit suicide. And this is all over, you know, all of these things and all of these other, you know, all these just like little things or big things, but that just happen at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's like the shorter, you know, like it's hard. You know, I want to explain things, but I'm also like, this is So, you know, it's like, all of those things happened, whether they were like together, like multiple things happening at once. Mm-hmm. And I felt so disconnected from my climbing. Mm-hmm. I felt so doing this process, being selfish was the last thing that I wanted to do. You know how selfish it is to go and rock climb on your own for a month and try one route, 3 months. Right. It's hard. You know, I feel compelled to do more with my life sometimes, or that I should have a bigger impact. And in through all of these different things that I was dealing with, very real emotions, like climbing at an elite level was kind of the last thing that I was thinking about. And I lost passion and I lost drive, and I just felt pretty disconnected from where I've been in the past and where I am now. And I did a trip to Mallorca, which really made me, like, in September, and that really made me fall in love, like, with rock climbing again. It made me, like, really, like, know that I really love rock climbing. Right. It's like my world, you know? I don't always have to be performing at a high level. I don't always have to be putting in the work like I did for the last 3 months, just, like, beating my head. I can go and have fun and go to a different area every day and climb on different routes every day and be with friends, and you know that also is important, you know. Mm-hmm. And then I did a bunch of coaching in the fall, and I felt like it wasn't just about me. It was like in some way I was using the knowledge or the skills that I've used for a long time to work with other people and to, you know, have an impact on somebody else's climbing. And through that, I've like, you know, then I was like, all right, cool, it's my turn, you know. Right. And then I had this whole process which culminated in that day. So like 2019 was the hardest year I've had since I was in the 9th grade. And when I was in the 9th grade, I went to a facility to get help for anxiety and depression. And this past year was the hardest year I've had since then.
How old are you now?
I'm 25.
Okay.
So, you know, like 10 years or something.
Right.
And I felt that this summer. I felt like I really isolated myself. I didn't want to work hard. Mm-hmm. And I was like sad and anxious and that's something that I've talked about. It's weird to talk about social anxiety, like anxiety and depression, especially when people see you via social media as being like, or being somebody who's really talkative, right? You know, and still having like these.
Yeah. So that 9th grader's still in there.
Totally. Yeah. And it just comes out every once in a while, you know, and I like can't. It would be like the millennial thing. I just can't right now. But I just like, it just comes out. And I have times where I'm really sad. And sad is not the right word, because it's like clinical depression kind of thing, you know? And I haven't experienced that in a really long time.
Well, I mean,
to that extent,
yeah. Like we were walking over here and kind of getting to know each other, because we don't really know each other, and you know, talking about how I have a kid, and you made some jokes, and I agreed, like, you know, all this adult stuff, right? Yeah. And but really, like, what happened to you this year, that's adult stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're on your own. Oh my God. And I mean, these things, the fact that they happened all at once is super heavy, but these are these like terrible milestones.
Yeah.
That's part of, living long enough on this earth to have these encounters with death, with, betrayal, with, and maybe you get lucky and you make it to 25. But it sounds like you had other issues as well that came along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a lot of, just a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
And
but I
things.
mean, the fact that you did them all in the same year is heavy.
It's just, it was a hard, and I won't, like, I'm a new pro rock climber.
Right.
This whole thing is new to me.
Right.
Like I love rock climbing and I've done it for a while, and that's where it's all rooted in. And so I never felt pressure from companies or pressure to be a pro athlete, but maybe internally I was just like, wow, the further I got away from climbing, the more stressful it became too. The more I dealt with these life things that are going to happen to everyone, the more stress I felt about being a professional rock climber.
Right.
And in this very amazing privileged lifestyle is also like a lot of really hard, you've got to work really hard. You got to be like traveling a lot and being by yourself a lot, and being lonely. And so I just questioned a lot of things. I questioned, like, am I capable of spending 3 months on a rock climb? And I found out I am. So, yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah, totally. So, you talked about anxiety and depression being part of a crisis that you had in ninth grade.
Yeah. Social anxiety kind of stuff with school and
Yeah. And it's let me say this. As far as I can understand it, I said, oh, that ninth grader's still in there.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of like whatever, alcohol, drug addiction. Like once you get clean, it's still always there.
Yeah.
Right. And I think with people who deal with these things on that level, it's like, you're always doing the work. It's always there. But in some ways I'm like, well, what from that, those feelings, translated into this guy. I was about to say kid, but everybody's a kid to me. That's
fine.
Younger than 40.
You can call me a kid.
Yeah. Or this young man, this person who then, can like put so much energy, effort, obsession into performance rock climbing. Like, is there a connection between some of that stuff? I mean, do you think, or am I like getting out there on a wing here? I tend to do that. This is what I do. Like, I get out there on these like psychological. I think
whether I answer your question correctly or take it in my own way is fine. But like, I'm really grateful that I had to, like, that in the ninth grade was really hard. Like, I really struggled with high school and school and just all of those things, and got the help that I needed. And I learned coping mechanisms, and that that I got away from this summer. And that's probably why I felt the way that I felt in a lot of ways. And I don't know if it, like, how much it attributes to my climbing or to, that, like, this whole, like, rock climber lifestyle.
Sure.
But there's definitely, like, there's things that are similar in a way.
Well,
I don't
the
know.
singularity of focus
is
what sort of becomes the unusual thing that allows, a very small percentage of people to excel at whatever sport.
Yep.
Because that's I keep talking about, like, the guy or girl who's like, oh yeah, they just train more. And it's like, yeah, they just train more.
Yep.
And if I train more, and it's just like, if you train more, you don't, and I don't. And I'm in this boat of like, I realize that me going and training would benefit me. I just don't do it because I don't have it.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like thinking about, like, how there could be a channeling of
I think
like,
it's a double-edged
anxiety
sword.
over performance could be
it's double-edged.
Right.
I think I care a lot.
Right.
I really care about the things that I do, and so that drives me forward. But then there's also this side of being anxious or feeling stressed about trying to red point or or what am I doing with my life anxiety that we all have, you know?
Right.
I'm 25 and I'm like, what am I doing?
I just keep like,
you know what I
keep
mean?
bringing up Hurricane, the town.
Yeah, it's so great.
And that's a pretty close to the proper pronunciation.
Hurricane.
Locally. Yeah, Hurricane.
Hurricane. It's
I just
spelled
keep getting this
hurricane,
image
but-
of you just like, you know, a lonely feeling like on your rest days, like in Hurricane, or maybe you go somewhere else. But like,
I got a gym membership at the Anytime Fitness,
Nice.
and to take showers and foam roll and stretch.
Right. Okay.
And I'm sure the people of Hurricane, like this very small Mormon Utah town, were
right.
like, "Who is this weird dude?"
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm the weird one there.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. So I think it's a weird lifestyle,
Right.
in it, and I'm just grateful I get a rock climbing's
yeah.
my medicine. It always has
Yeah,
been. You know,
right.
it's like really healthy for me, and it's really healthy for a lot of people. Whether it's like the actual climbing side or the community side, or like having evangelism, which is like, we hear that word and we think of religion, but really it's just like people meeting together or people having community. It's just like having a similar passion that we can talk about, you know, and have focus and have drive. And those are the things that make me healthy.
Right.
They're healthy for me.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you're talked about this year, you know, this sort of series of bad things, and then kind of forgetting or not understanding like what rock climbing meant to you for a minute. And it's really interesting because, again, thinking about depression, and that's one of those you know, horrible feedback loops is that even if you intellectually understand what's good for you, you don't do it. And that's really the difference when you just said of being sad versus actual clinical depression. It's like when you're sad, you have this feeling of knowing that you're going to not be sad at some point. And so it's interesting that you were able to figure out, and lucky that I think you were able to figure out that, like, well, I don't feel like climbing, and climbing doesn't feel significant to me at this moment, but I should go do it because it is my medicine.
Yep.
And it's like taking your medicine.
Yeah.
You know what
I mean, and it's like,
and you broke out of it, and like, great place to frickin' do it is Mallorca.
It's important to, you know, it's important to, I mean, it's so easy to hide or to, you know, sink away in those times, and you like get out of your own way and go through it instead of like trying to get around or something. And having the experience with the kid I coached, it kind of also, you know, was like, this is crazy, you know, I just felt crazy that like I was dealing with something, and I'm not now I'm like that person for somebody else as well, and gave me a significant amount of perspective.
Was he physically recovered? Did he?
Yeah,
he didn't mess himself up.
He's okay. Yeah,
Okay,
he's okay.
because the boys tend to do something like go big. Like,
he's okay.
I mean, in terms of just physically.
Yeah, physically. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him right after, and he's back into climbing and back. You know, it's like, you know, he has days where he doesn't care about rock climbing. He's like, I don't really want to go, and I'm like, that's okay.
Right.
But let's not make a cycle of that.
Well, it's interesting.
You can miss days, you know? You can not be motivated to go to the gym, and that's fine. But as soon as that becomes normal, that's now you're getting away from something that you know is healthy for you.
Right.
You know? And it's that's is a much longer conversation of like, you know, when you're just apathetic about it. You know you want to care about it, and you don't.
Right.
You know, that's a hard thing to talk to anybody about. But yeah, just like trying to put yourself in more situations, and to me, it's like trying to say yes as much as I can.
Sure. It's cool that you have this experience that you have.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 15 years old.
Yeah.
It's like,
which is when like I dealt with the things that I dealt with for,
exactly.
you know, like I had to face them for the first time.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so you're a homeboy there in the Red.
Yeah, I grew up climbing in the Red. I started climbing in the Red when I was like 12 years old. So that's like, that's my place.
Right on.
That's my home.
It's interesting. You don't sound like you grew up in Louisville.
No?
No.
I travel a lot nowadays. Louisville.
Yeah, right. You
Louisville,
could get
Kentucky. No, I mean, if I go into a diner,
right,
you'll hear me say a lot of yes ma'ams.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. So you're like, I just asked you earlier that if you were still kind of like riding some of the feelings you got from this climb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you headed to now?
Yeah. So it's cool. I get to go home and train. And then maybe 2 weeks ago, I booked a ticket to go back to Spain.
Okay.
It was my 4th time there, to kind of like Catalonia region, the sport climbing capital of the world. So I'll be there. I leave February 25th. And I was there 2 years ago, and I tried a route called Joe Blau at Oleana, and wasn't able to do it. The goal is to kind of go back and climb that route, and then to, kind of get away from projecting and,
right.
Maybe climb more routes.
Okay.
I think it's just kind of sample a little bit more, do a bit more rock climbing than just being like locked in on one set of moves.
Yeah.
So
when you go to a place like Oleana, you can show up.
What a crazy place.
Well, you can show up by yourself because you're going to know
totally
like half the crags.
Totally.
So do you normally travel like that, or do you partner up?
So this trip to Oleana, most of my Euro trips will be, I'll try to coordinate to do like a trip with somebody.
Right.
So my buddy Eric and I are going for the whole 5 weeks together. There have been, other trips like when I drive out somewhere, when I drive out west, it's normally solo. Yeah, and both have their perks and both have their, it's all, they're all great. Yeah. I'm kind of fine with either. I think maybe I'd rather have like buddies. It kind of makes trips like a little easier sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Even though you can get sick of
but
each
it's
other.
also like, in a place like the Red, like I think something that makes me on the Z-list celebrity or whatever, like I'm well known enough in the climbing community is that I'm just like out at the crag all the time.
Right.
And so like I just meet people, and in that, like there's so many people that are on just the same circuit.
Right.
Like everyone goes to Waco in the winter, and then they go to, here and then there and then here. So it's normally pretty easy to like kind of link up or, have, I would rather like, the people that I'm with is really important to me, especially when you're in this process of having such a hard battle. Having like a really good moral support, a really good group of team around you is really helpful. So it's, I think it's nice when you're with good people.
Right.
It makes everything easier.
All right, I'm gonna get all like dad on you here,
Yeah.
but
It's fine.
when you are, on the dark, mean streets of Hurricane,
Yeah.
all alone, kicking a can down the street.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like you have these moments of like, well, what should I really do with my life? Or is this, and then this idea this year, you had the ability to, I think, contribute in terms of coaching and specifically with this kid that we've been talking about. What do you think that does look like? I mean,
so
have you got some sort of like?
No.
I mean, they're MBAs probably out at this point.
Man, I was ready to. In every single bio I've ever filled out, it's like, what would you be doing if you weren't rock climbing? And I'm like, MBA, I'm 5'9" with 2-inch vertical.
I'd be playing stadiums with either guitar or bass.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah,
for sure.
No, man. I mean, I think that it's good to have plans. It's good to have a 5-year, 10-year plan. And it's also really good to live in the moment and say yes to opportunities that arrive. That's where I'm at now. I don't know what I'm doing. I think that there's a lot of opportunities that I feel out, and some work out and some don't, whether that's, I feel like there's an avenue for me in the climbing community, whether that's working for brands or whatever. Right now I want to pursue climbing at a high level, and I want to give back via slideshows and clinics that I do. Like, I don't get like, I do the whole social media thing, and I think it can be a really great place for inspiration and for for networking and things like that. But the things that really like drive me forward is when I like get to work with a group of people on skills that they want to do, whether that's gym to crag or an endurance clinic or anything like that. So that's what separates me as an athlete a lot, is that I want those opportunities. I don't want to feel so selfish all the time too. And I want to give my knowledge back to people. and that energy is reciprocated. I care a lot about it. I work hard at it. I show up on time, and the people in my clinics and at my slideshows, I think, can feel that. So that's where I'm at now. That's what I want to pursue, is my climbing and finding these other ways that I can do more for my community. And I don't know what that looks like long term. I don't know if I can be a pro rock climber forever. I know that there's a lot more for me to achieve in my own climbing that I personally want to pursue. But there's also a point where you're, maybe not climbing your hardest, or maybe I just don't always want to feel the pressure that I have to be climbing hard.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I find that I'm inspired by people and I want to inspire others.
Right.
And I think that's maybe why I connect with people like Kobe Bryant so much, is that I'm inspired by people, these big people in my life. And hopefully I can do that for other people. That doesn't make you money, though, all the time. So there's times where I'm okay being broke. And, I didn't go to college. I don't have a backup plan. My mom and dad. My mom.
Yeah, they actually asked me to ask you that. They called earlier.
My mom gave me a Christmas present a week ago.
Nice.
Christmas was a month. You know what? It's right. I don't know what I'm doing, and sometimes I'm scared of that, and I'm insecure about that. Right. But I also feel like I have enough people around me that would tell me, like, hey, dude, you're fucking up. Or you should be, like, maybe looking. There's people that would give me that dad advice, that's constructive criticism that I would look at. And I just, like, try to pay attention to the people before me, people like Jonathan Segrist or whatever, who have made a lane or made, their own kind of path.
Well, it's interesting that I've been talking personally and with listeners of the show about this idea, and for 8 years, this idea of climbing hard being the pathway to sponsorship. And then it's kind of morphed lately into this, whether or not, like, these sponsorships are pushing some of these, big mountain climbers to do things that
interesting.
Are getting them killed or whatever. But there's been this, but what I'm getting at with this is that an interesting thing about when you really look at people who are sort of sponsored or they're working with brands is a better way to put it, because a lot of times you're a salaried employee and have all these obligations aside from just fucking off and climbing all the time. That's actually way more common than just like straight sponsorship. Is that, in fact, if you look around at a lot of brands, North Face and BD and Patagonia especially, they are sponsoring people who are really good and interesting climbers, but they're actually sponsoring them for a lot of good other things that they're doing in the climbing community. Just talking to Kate Rutherford today, a Patagonia athlete, like full on, but she's doing this farm to table for climbers kind of thing, and trying to identify places near popular climbing areas where you can get local food and all that sort of stuff. And so it's like, that's why she's sponsored. I mean, you don't know the last hard thing she climbed. Yeah.
And she's been in the game a minute.
Forever.
It's like,
and so it can morph into this thing that's not about, oh my God. And in fact, it rarely is anymore about how hard
I'm not
you're
Adam
climbing.
Ondra.
Yeah.
Like, I would really like to climb 515. I haven't, I think longevity is key in being, I want to conduct myself in a way that my parents would be proud of, that my community would be proud of, that I'm proud of.
Right.
That's important. That homegrown stuff is like real. It's like, I'd rather have that support than like one major success and be forgotten about forever or whatever, The whole sponsorship world and all of that is I think it's definitely trending to individuality and people and diversity. I'm a privileged white male. There's people who had a much harder path to get where they got. Those people there needs to be more support, more opportunity and accessibility for everyone to find rock climbing. It changed my life, and everyone should have that opportunity as well if they want to.
Cool. Well, thanks for sitting down, Drew.
Thank you so much.
That was kind of a fun ride, man.
I mean, it's probably different than a lot of the ones you do.
Yeah, totally.
But I really, really appreciate the opportunity and getting to spend time with you. And it's great. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much.
Okay, folks. Thanks to Dru Mack for sitting down. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I don't have much to tell you. I think that this time around, check your knot means staying inside, staying safe, making sure those around you are staying safe. And staying in touch with your fellow isolators is probably a good idea too. So instead of check your knot, check on each other. And we'll talk again before the end of March, I promise.
When you follow your bliss, and by bliss I mean the deep sense of being in it and doing what the push is out of your own existence, you follow that and doors will open where you would not have thought there were going to be doors, and where there wouldn't be a door for anybody else. And there's something about the integrity of a life, and the world moves in and helps.